Hello, welcome. This is the webinar on critical chain in new product development with subtitle How to Develop Faster the Products of Tomorrow. Okay. The outline is very simple. After a brief introduction, we're going to first discuss single project management and then portfolio project management. And I'm going to mix in theory and practice. I'll be presenting four different case studies or examples to give you a better idea of how you apply these ideas in the real world. And finally, I will conclude. I'm going to be talking about critical chain in new product development. I'm not going to have the time to properly describe the whole of critical chain, right? It's not that it takes weeks, right? But it would take a couple of hours to do it properly. So I'm just going to give you an executive overview of the critical chain. Okay, but there's a lot there free to catch up. Okay, for instance, there's the 5-minute summary, but you're basically going to hear that in the next half hour. Then there's a series of 4 videos of 20 minutes each. So in 80 minutes, you can get a pretty good view of what's going on. There's a lot of videos on the YouTube channel. It's over 70 dedicated to critical chain. We've got a website dedicated to critical chain project management there. You can see the URL. So forgive me, I won't properly describe all the details of critical chain, but there's plenty of resources there for you to better understand after the conference. Okay, off we go. So let's talk about single project management. The trick in critical chain is it goes on the hypothesis that if we manage individual projects healthily and well, and that they have a good probability of finishing on time or early, then that's going to change and make much easier the management of a portfolio, a collection of projects. Okay, that's why we always start with single project management. Even though in practice the vast majority of what we do using critical chain is in fact portfolios and not individual projects. We do individual projects, but quite the major proportion is portfolios with several 10, 100 different projects going on in the same organization. Okay, so let me just give you then the quick overview of the concept of critical chain, right? Let us imagine we have a project which is just broken up very simply into 3 parts: the beginning, the middle, and the end. Okay, and let's say that we have this planning which has 4 weeks for the first stage, 16 weeks for the second stage, and 12 weeks for the last stage, right? How did we do that? We went to see the people involved and in charge of each of those stages. Let's imagine that it is a product development, okay? And we've got the first stage, which is proof of concept. We went to see that person. They said, how long would it take you to prove the concept of this new car engine that works with water? And they looked out the window and they gave you the answer, 4 weeks. Okay, you go to the next person who's doing the prototype and you say, if I bring you this thing, and you've got to develop the prototype, how long would it take to do that? To impress your boss, you maybe use Excel and tell them you have to think about it a bit, and you come back with the answer of 16 weeks, right? And then you go to the last person who's got to do the pre-series, and you say, if I bring you this new engine that works with water in 20 weeks' time, how long is it going to take you to do the pre-series? And the person says, well, it's going to take me about, I'm already late with so much stuff, and then he's all stressed out and stuff. You say, it'll take me 18 weeks, and the boss says, no, this is important, this is the revolution in the company, I'll give you 12, okay? And so you have 12 weeks for the last one. And then you have planned the project, right? And it's going to end late. Regularly, we do audits of on-time finish performance in companies, and it's nearly always less than 20%. Quite often it's just 0%. They haven't finished any new product development project on time in the past 5 years, right? That's quite frequent. So what's gone wrong? According to the theory of constraints, what people have tried to do is force certainty on uncertainty. You're asking for commitments from people in an uncertain world, and so they've taken their protection. They've added a safety margin in their task since you're asking them for a commitment. How long is it going to take you to do this? Okay. So to keep it very simple, let's assume that each of those times that they gave, 4, 16, 12 weeks, okay, in all cases there was about 50%, about half of that time was in fact protection against uncertainty. Let's just say that when they said it would take them 4 weeks to do this, it was probably they were hoping to do it in 2 weeks, but to be sure, to be reliable, to be able to meet their commitment, they said 4, right? They added a local safety margin in their tasks, right? critical chain goes on the hypothesis that you've got to take out those local margins and only have a global protection. Okay, so it removes each of those protections, right, and it puts them at the end. And as you can see from the graph here, if we do that in this example, we get to something where we're assuming, this is just a hypothetical example, that the buffer at the end will be of 8 weeks. Okay, and it's true that very often these buffers are about 1/3 of the overall duration of projects. Okay, and there we have a critical chain plan. Okay, and then we execute it. And to execute it, we use the fever chart, where on the horizontal axis we have the realization of the project from the beginning at 0% to the end on the right at 100%. Okay, that's the project from beginning to end. And on the vertical axis, we have the buffer penetration or buffer consumption, which is 8 weeks in this particular example. And it's just see how you consume it or not. Okay, and it's perfectly normal that you have that white line there is an example of a good healthy project. You use up your buffer, that's what it's there for, perfectly normal. And your commitment to the outside world, to the show where your product's going to be presented, or to marketing or whatever, is on the top right hand corner. Okay, and if you set up the system properly, you're aiming to end a little bit early compared to that commitment, which is exactly how people avoid missing airplanes, right? They end up, to make sure that they don't miss the project of taking the airplane, they end up waiting a few minutes or an hour in front of the boarding gate. That's how they make sure they don't miss their airplane, and this is how you make sure you don't finish your project late. You finish it a little bit early. Okay, that's very quick. In a bit more detail, we have here this little example with, again, still simplistic school case, okay, where Peter, Simon, Macy and so forth are doing a number of tasks with various durations of those tasks, okay. And what they're going to do is they're going to think about those durations and try and work out if they can break the durations that they've given into 2 different times, the execution time and the safety, right? And as you can see from this example here, right, we're assuming in this in this example in front of you that we're going to manage to reduce all the tasks by a factor of 2, divide the durations by 2, right? What was 8 days becomes 4 days, okay, and so forth. Everything in the same amount, okay. This is not the approach that we use in the real world working with our clients, okay, and it's probably why we have so little problems implementing theory of constraints and critical chain, because some people think you can just go in and cut the times by 2, okay, and we don't do that, because how could you possibly go in and say, hey, you know, I went to a webinar and this guy says you just divide the times by 2, you'll end up going much faster. It just doesn't make sense, does it? So what we do is we teach people over a 4-hour, 8-hour training session what exactly the logic is behind, and then they can give us what we're looking for, which is a focused duration and a pessimistic duration. The focused duration is, imagine this perfect world in which you only had that to do, you were not going to be interrupted, you were not going to be into multitasking, you had a full kit, you had everything you needed to do the work, okay? And in those conditions, how long would it take you to do the work? On average, still not a commitment, okay? Half the time you'll take more than this number, and that is called the focus duration, okay? And then for the same task, you ask people, how long will it take to do the this task? If you're pessimistic, you know, things will go wrong, okay? And you get those 2 times. It's those 2 times we use. The focus durations are put into the planning, and the pessimistic, or rather the difference between the focused and pessimistic, is taken into account to decide the size of the project buffer, okay? I repeat, we do not divide the durations by 2 in the real world, okay? So once you've done that, you're going to then find the critical chain, okay? To do that, you take into account the workload on the resources, the resource availability, right? In this example here, as you can see from the 2 red tasks, Peter first does one task and then does another, right? We do not schedule it asking Peter to do 2 things at once, right? We level, to use the word most often used in for instance, Microsoft projects and that sort of stuff. We do a finite capacity planning with regards to the resources. We don't plan multitasking, okay? And this gives us, by the way, the critical chain. That's the red, the sequence of tasks that are there in red. and that takes into account the dependencies. I have to do that before that, and the fact that I only have one Peter and one Simon and so forth. Right? I take into account the availability of the resources. That gives us the critical chain. That sequence is the one which is going to determine the duration of the project overall, right? Because the other stuff, the blue stuff, is non-critical. It has slack, to use a term, and it's the red tasks that are going to determine the duration of the project. Right? They're close cousins, by the way, the critical chain and the critical path. Maybe there'll be some questions about that. They're very close cousins. But what is new and different, okay, is that the critical chain, that red sequence of red tasks, is completed by a project buffer at the end. Okay, the project buffer is of a size that will absorb the variability in the tasks of the critical chain, right? Of that red sequence. Okay, and so that's how you will calculate how big it has to be, by working out how variable and how uncertain you are with regards to the tasks in the critical chain. Okay. Another very important point, which is that to make sure that the critical chain remains where it is, you have to make sure that the rest, the non-critical part, the blue part, does not get in the way, right? Doesn't become late. And to do that, you have feeding buffers, a different type of buffer, which ensures that the non-critical tasks finish their part of the job sufficiently on time so that they don't impact the critical part, the red part. Okay, so we make sure that the non-critical stays non-critical and doesn't impact the critical chain, okay, with feeding buffers. Okay, sorry, this is going very fast, I realize. Have a look at the videos if you want a slower explanation of that, because that's quite a brain teaser. Okay, so on we go. Once you've done that, right, then you're going to go into execution, and the execution is based on the fact that the success or the failure of the project is going to be determined by how well you execute the sequence of tasks in the critical chain, the red ones. Okay, and we try and apply or reinvent the relay race principle. Okay, like a relay race, there will be a baton or going from one actor to another. In our case, what we often do is recommend that people use a mascot, a remarkable, strange, often funny object. We did one in New England recently, so you've got a lobster there, and a moose, and a panda because of a rare species. Anyway, our clients enjoy choosing remarkable, fun things. This object will follow physically the critical chain through the system, so people will know, watch out, this is what is determining the success or failure of the development of product number 22. Okay, keep out of their way. They've got the mascot, let them do their job. They're the ones determining the success or failure of the project. Okay, if you're in an environment where there are too many projects going on simultaneously, there's another solution which we use. If you have, I know, 30 different projects, you're not going to have 30 different mascots. It doesn't work anymore, does it? Well, then we create special rooms called critical chain rooms, where they're protected, they can't be interrupted, and people go there when they have to work on a critical chain task. They can work uninterrupted. They're dispensed from any silly meetings, and so forth. Right. So that's how it's done. And the following of the execution is, as you can see from this picture here, the famous fever chart, the iconic fever chart. And this is how you monitor the execution of a project. And it's quite simple, really, isn't it? When you think now you've understood the overall principle. If you're in the green, you're just in the normal noise. You're in the expected variability and uncertainty of your project, right? You expected to have problems because the planning was based on focused, optimistic durations, right? So it's normal that you're going slower. Okay, and if you get into the red, in fact, you've got more problems than you have planned for, more than you expected, right? And you have to think about how you can resolve that problem, act to rectify that so that you finish on time, or rather, as I say, to finish a little bit early. Okay, as I explained a few minutes ago. Okay, so that's the critical chain for one project. Okay, and the beauty of it is, if you can have all your projects like this, all of them healthily finishing on quickly and early, okay, then it's going to be quite easy to manage a portfolio of healthy projects, isn't it? The problem is you're trying to manage a portfolio of unhealthy, sick projects. That's a headache, right? An example. This is an example from the United Kingdom, JSK. one of the 10 largest pharmaceutical companies, number 7 I believe at the moment. They develop drugs, which is a highly developed, highly competitive market with lots of regulations and stuff, which is perfectly normal. And their goal, of course, is to be the first market with developing the new drugs. Okay, we're going to look here just at new product introduction. There's the development of the molecule, then NPI, then clinical tests, and then launch. And this means that, you know, they found the molecule, they're now producing. In fact, they're doing two things. They're producing a batch which will now allow the clinical tests. So they're going to have, in this example, a few thousand units that will then be used in the trials, clinical trials. Okay, so they have to produce those. And also, at the same time, in that stage, they have to prove that they're capable of producing this drug in large-scale production, right? So that's why they have, in fact, two different deliverables in the plan, which you can see there in the circles at the bottom. That happens, right? You can have one project that has to give you two deliverables. That is the case here. Okay. So they implemented critical chain. They started on 2 pilot projects in one of their divisions, and those went very well, and they finished both of those early. And I'll talk about it again in the conclusion. There's the quantitative stuff, which is nice, going faster, finishing on time, all that stuff. But there's also a big change in the quality of work life. A lot less stress, a lot more visibility, a lot more coordination, cooperation, and stuff. Okay, and so the site leadership team here was very appreciative of the change there was in the work environment, not just the results in terms of going faster and finishing early. So, you know, they did a feedback on the pilot before deciding to roll out, and these are some of their quotes of that meeting. Instead of looking in the rearview mirror, they're looking ahead. That's one of the beauties of the fever chart, right? You look at when I'm going to finish. And they were a lot more active in problem solving, collaborative problem solving, a lot earlier on in the process, and a lot more win-win work at all levels. And people started, it takes a while, it didn't happen overnight, starting to trust schedules. Okay, because frankly, in most environments, nobody trusts schedules. People don't even read them anymore because they trust them so little, right? And one of the strange things about critical chain is it is based on the fact that you can create a project schedule, right? So once that was a big success, then they rolled it out in that site to other kinds of projects, CapEx projects, IT projects, any major initiative where a critical chain would be useful. They started using critical chain to do that, and it's being rolled out elsewhere. Okay. You can have a look at a testimonial on the TOC-ICO, Theory of Constraints International Certification Organizations, the official organization of the Theory of Constraints community. On their website, on YouTube, you'll see a conference by JSK where they talk about their journey. Okay, so on this one, I just wanted to maybe obvious point. If you thinking in a large organization about how to implement critical chain, very often you do a few pilots, and once you've been convinced by the results of those pilots, you roll it out to the at least one the portfolio, and then maybe to all the different portfolios, all the different projects, right? Since this one started in new product development and then ended up involving any kind of major initiative in the company, CapEx investments, new buildings, IT, whatever. Okay. So that is the single project, okay? And we're now going to talk about the portfolio. I repeat the crazy trick, which is, a 10-year-old child can understand. If I manage my projects individually, each one, for them to be healthy and have a good probability of finishing early, okay, then managing a bunch of 20 healthy projects is easy, much easier in fact, than individual projects, because I can actually move part of a team from project A to project B if project B has had more problems than I expected, right? So project management of a portfolio, the job of PMO could or should be really, really easy, and not a thing which makes you suicidal and stressed out and big mess of all your weekends and all that sort of stuff, right? I repeat, a PMO could have a fun life and enjoy the work and finish all his projects with very good performance. Anyway, there is one condition on that. You have to make sure you get the right quantity of projects in your system, right? And this is the killer, because it's very rarely properly done. All this is part of the theory of constraints. Let me remind you what it's based on. It says you cannot distribute the work equitably in an organization, right? Somebody's got the short straw somewhere in the system. Some department, probably in your organization, is overloaded compared to the others, okay? And it's that department, therefore, as a bottleneck, which will determine the performance of your flow in new product development, okay? And if you lose an hour in that system, in that department, you're going to lose an hour for the whole thing, right? So you've got to understand this one thing here. It's all this is theory of constraints, but there are two types of constraints in critical chain project management. The first I've already talked about. It is the sequence of the critical chain of one project. It is the constraint of the project. Each project has its constraint, right? That is one dimension. The other is that all these projects, the portfolio, are going through the different departments, okay? And within that organization, somewhere there's going to be the resource that has the greatest workload, or the most overloaded, and that is the capacity constraint. That is the bottleneck of the portfolio, right? It is another constraint. So there are two types, two dimensions of constraints in critical chain, okay? This part here is going to talk about this other one, right? What is the department that is overloaded? Or, as sometimes happens, who is it? What's his name? Albert, John, whatever. Because in some organizations you find that even though there are 200 people, when you look the theory of constraint way into all this, you find that there's 1, 2, maybe 10 people only that are in fact the constraint, because they have the short straw for whatever reason. And we'll give you some examples in a few minutes. Okay, so that's it. I'll give you some examples. If in some organizations, it's fairly rare, according to Marris Consulting, you don't have a bottleneck, it can happen, then you need to choose what part of your system you're going to select as a control point to manage the flow and manage the quantity of work in the system, right? So you need a control point, which will be either the bottleneck if you're overloaded, or a control point that you've chosen. Okay. All this is a short version of something that's taken me 30 years to understand, but I could go on at length about what I've just said and say sometimes the opposite. Anyway, so once you've worked that out, right, the management of your portfolio is quite easy. You've got to make sure that you don't push into the system more than it can digest, because otherwise you just pile up the work on people's desks or in the systems, okay? People start multitasking all over the place, changing priorities all over the place, and everybody just gradually goes mad, right? Sounds like your office this morning, yeah? And so you don't do that, right? What you want to do is to go from what you see here on the left to the right. That's to say you want to reduce the quantity of work in progress in the system, so that you only put into the system what can come out of the system, and what can come out of the system is what it can go through the bottleneck or the capacity constraint, okay? So this is the key to proper portfolio management. You want to get the things flowing through the system, and to do that you have to launch a new project just at the right time, not too early or not too late, okay? And that is done by staggering, and I won't go into the detail of the Gantt chart you have here, but the logic is very simple, right? You want to put the work into the system so that when it gets to the bottleneck, it's not going into a huge queue, and things are going to flow through the system properly. Okay, so a key point is determining the start date of a project. That is the key to managing a healthy and well-performing portfolio. Okay, let me give you a couple of examples here. Here we have a company that had both its research and development projects and its engineering to order. Right, it's an engineering to order company, but it did research and development projects. And those two things, those two portfolios, in fact, overlapped in this organization. You couldn't say that these people just did only R&D and these people just did engineering to order. There was quite a lot of overlap in the tasks and what people were working on. Okay, so how could we deal with this? Okay, it's this company is making machines that recycle cloth, and so it's obviously since it's in the recycling business, it's high growth, and they got their system filled up with excessive number of projects in the system, and this is the story of how we clean that up to get everything flowing again. Okay, so I repeat, the resources were shared between research and development and engineering to order. Okay, So what we did is first we cleared up engineering to order, and then we cleared up research and development. Why? Because, you know, like any organization, it had to make money and honor its commitments and contracts with its clients, right? So if there was a project where they had to deliver this new machine and equipment to Turkey in 4 weeks' time, that was a significant commitment, and that would be the priority, more important than somebody working on a new technology that wouldn't come to fruition for 2 years or whatever, right? So if you don't get your day-to-day commitments under control, you're never going to be able to stand back properly and do research and development in good conditions, right? So what we did is first we applied critical chain to the engineering to order, got that under control. They started going two times faster than they used to in the engineering to order business, finishing everything on time, lots of productivity, etc., but that's not subject to today. And then we attacked the research and development, okay? And to do that, we had a look, and there were too many initiatives going on, right? We just got everybody together, asked them what the number of our research and development projects were doing, and as often happens, you know, there were several lists and people couldn't agree, and when we finally got the whole list of all the R&D initiatives, it was a lot longer than what people thought, and it was way over the top in terms of what could be done, right? It might be difficult sometimes to work out, you know, if this is going to take 2 weeks or if it's going to take 6 weeks, this job, this task, or whatever. But sometimes it's very obvious there's too much stuff in there, right? Isn't there? Among other things, because you see there's nothing moving anymore, right? That's when you know you've got too much work in there. So we just got everybody together and had a meeting where we discussed what the projects were and how we could freeze some projects, get people to stop working on them, and then prioritize those that we kept to get those moving. Okay, so that's what we did without sequencing. You know, everything was more or less urgent and late. We then stopped some, froze some, define the priorities of those that were left, make sure that those priorities were transparent, stable, and didn't change, you know, every day or every week, and that there weren't several different lists of priorities. One list, stable, with the support of top management. And off we went, and that, you know, it cleared things up very, very quickly. It was, retrospectively anyway, it was obvious it had to be done, and it was then managed in a very simple way. The system we applied, which we quite often do, is the 1-for-1 rule. You're not allowed to launch or unfreeze one of the projects until you've finished another project, right? So you keep the quantity of R&D projects constant in the system, a conWIP for those who know that vocabulary, and of course you take into account the availability of resources. Okay, so the result, frankly, was, you know, everybody said, "Wow!" We were stuck in a traffic jam, and suddenly, you know, we were going very, very fast, and we, you know, left all the competition in the dust behind us, because everything, not only the projects we were selling, right, the engineering to order, were going very quickly, but our R&D really picked up speed, and so that gave everybody a lot of appetite and energy and lots of smiles. Okay, just to understand the beauty of managing a portfolio, this is what the fever chart of a portfolio looks like, right? It is the concatenation of each of the individual fever charts of the individual projects, right? So you put them all on the same postcard, right? And then you work out which is the priority, and I think a 10-year-old child can work out what the priority is here, right? It's, I won't have the time, it's either P1 or P2, right? We could discuss that, but I won't today. And it just makes everything simple, and you can put that next to the coffee machine, right? So that people will stop trying to say, my project is important, mine is more important, whatever. If you get to this thing, and this thing is possible, you won't start like that, but this is where you get to about after 2 years, once you've purged the system and you've got used to it. About 80% are in the green, so they will finish early without any management attention at all, right? I repeat, 80% of your projects are just going quickly through, faster than before, finishing early without any management attention at all, right? That's critical chain. And you just do some management by exception on the projects that have more problems than expected. And if you're doing the job well, and everybody says this, that's done this, lived this, is you end up working on P1 in particular on this chart. Let's just say you end up working on the problems very early on, rather than being in firefighting hitting each other over the head with regards to the projects that are already late, and my project is more important than yours. Okay, that is how you manage a portfolio using fever charts and critical chain. I hope tomorrow morning between 2:30 and 3 o'clock in the morning you will wake up saying you want one of these. Okay, so have a good look. Between 2:30 and 3 o'clock in the morning tomorrow, please wake up and say, I want a fever chart like that. Next case study. These guys are a startup. Initially, when we started working with them, there were just 30 people in the organization. An industrial startup. They wanted to produce chairs, very lightweight seats for airplanes, flying taxis, trains, etc., etc. Well, that's what they're doing. Okay, they're now over 120 and they're growing, week by week as it's going ramping up. It's a big success. Okay, we looked at what was going on in the company and we found that the bottleneck was in the design office. Okay, obviously their challenge was that this is a startup, right? So their life and death was going to be determined by how quickly and how well they developed their new products and got to market, right? So this was why for them critical chain was absolutely critical. And by the way, it wasn't only critical to develop the products; they were simultaneously building the factory. So we had the product and process development going on simultaneously, since they had a factory to build and products to develop as well. Okay, so there was a lot of stuff going on, installing new machines, industrialization, the ramps up in terms of production, all this in at least for the aeronautical part, with a lot of regularizations and so forth. So a lot of things going on. That gives you an idea of what the portfolio fever chart in their world was. That's towards the beginning. Okay, so as you can see, there's quite a few are in the red, right? And it takes a while before you get to understand how to use it. And as usual, we didn't just do critical chain. I know this conference is going to give you the impression, critical chain is the answer. What's your question? That's not at all how we work. There are lots of other things going on. So there was a Kanban board to visualize the work, for instance. We used the focus and finish of execution to make sure if you start on something, you take it to the finishing line and finish it before moving on to the next one. There was a lot more managerial focus with good meetings to identify blockages much earlier in the development, and faster, more reactive decision making and all that sort of stuff, right? So it's not just critical chain going on here, right? The design office was the capacity constraint. Okay, in this particular case, it was interesting because it was more of a managerial and organizational and technical thing. It wasn't that they needed more people or more machines and whatever. It was just that this department was broken, going around in circles, being incoherent, and what happened was when we did the diagnostic and they saw that this was the bottleneck of the system, they realized that the management attention of the management committee of the company had to look at the design office before all else, because that was determining the performance. And then they realized that indeed it wasn't very clear what was going on, because, for instance, they were doing some digital testing, but it wasn't clear what they were trying to test. It was all cleaned up, a lot to do with making sure that they knew exactly what specifications, what they were trying to prove in their developments, and that cleared it up rather than hiring more people or whatever. Okay, but anyway, that was broken as a bottleneck, and throughput increased significantly, so did the speed and everything. They all lived happily ever after, going much faster, bringing out lots and lots of products. And you can see that portfolio there's got quite a lot of stuff coming through. For a small organisation, right? They've got a lot of projects for a small organisation. Okay, and it's going very fast. Okay, so that's it. Let me conclude. I always find it frustrating to do webinars like this, because I give the impression, this is the answer, when our life is a lot more plural and diverse than that. My first love was and still is lean, and I think that lean engineering is misunderstood, underrated. People are still trying to just do the lean production part and haven't yet really got to grips with how you produce a product that is lean inside, right? And yet Toyota does that and always has. go back to the origins, and you'll see, you know, how you design a product for it to be easy to produce. You don't get to the quality that Toyota has without designing things differently, involving production and the developers to do it, and so forth. So if that's where you want to do, so you produce beautiful objects, right? I mean, it's so sad that many organizations think that, you know, they can celebrate just finishing the development of a new product on time. Now that's a pathetic ambition. The product should be a blockbuster, should be easy to make, make a lot of money, and be loved by its clients and whatever. Just finishing it on time is not enough of an ambition, is it? But so many companies just think, we finished it, you know, only 6 months late. That's good. No, that's not good at all, right? So why is critical change so powerful in this area? It's because it enables you to clear up the mess, okay, and little by little give people the time to then do their job properly and stand back and think hard about how they develop a new product. It's going to be better meeting the specifications of the market, easy to manufacture, easy to get good quality, blockbusters, right? That's what you want to do. And the answers to getting a good blockbuster product is more, for me, something to do with lean engineering than to do with critical chain, which is a management system to schedule and synchronize the efforts of people to produce things, okay? But it won't guarantee that you have a beautiful product. It will just make sure that that product is finished on time or early, quickly, on time or early. If it's a stupid idea, you'll get that stupid idea faster. As I conclude, just a few points. Not everybody knows, I think, that this has been used for small projects, small firms, and more recently for one of the world's more complicated projects, which is developing new aircraft. Okay, Embraer developed an aircraft after dozens of years of apprenticeship, playing around with critical chain. It wasn't, you know, they didn't just wake up one morning and decide to do critical chain. Anyway, they did it, and they finished 22 months early their aircraft. It was a blockbuster, representing, I don't know what percentage of their sales. Anyway, it's yet another example, maybe you'll come back to it in questions and answers, of the faster you can develop your product, the better it will be. Okay, I repeat, the faster you develop your product, the better it will be. I have on purpose not hammered, as I often do, the quantitative results of critical chain. You go about 40% faster with your projects. You can do nearly twice as many per person with more efficiency and productivity, finish them all on time, all these sorts of quantitative things. Okay, they're there, right? They were there in the project, in the examples I give you. But I just wanted to conclude with some of the more qualitative aspects. So here are a few quotes from people. In one of our clients, Aircraft Components, they said, you know, we've never developed it. They were going more than twice the speed as they previously were, right? And they said, we've never developed products like this where there are basically no quality defects and it's much, much better design. Another one of our clients who we worked with throughout the COVID pandemic, developing things for the COVID, and they were going much faster. They were congratulated by the Food and Drug Administration for the quality of their submissions, even though they were going much, much faster than they used to. So again, speed equals quality. And yet another example from another of our clients, Safran Aircraft Engines. Great success. Okay, the first time that the regulatory authority certified a product without any major or minor reservations. I don't know if, for those who know that business, that's not very frequent, right? Where the product is considered perfect as is with no reservations. Okay, so critical chain not only improves the speed and efficiency of project portfolios, it also improves the quality of the product and the quality of work life. Right. To conclude, what are you waiting for to implement critical chain project management? Thank you very much for your time, and see you next time.